Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. It is Monday over here in Atlanta, Georgia. I was off really all last week and didn't have a chance to do any podcast recording. So I'm super excited to be back in the seat, especially with my guest, Ellen Wingate, who I met through a hospital partnership at Levine's Children's in Charlotte. But Ellen has all of those variables that I love. She does it all. She does it all so beautifully. And we all know that the does it all characterization is kind of overplayed. But when I met Ellen and she shared more of her story about being a mom and leading this wonderful nonprofit, as well as her volunteer role at the hospital, I thought she offered a really interesting perspective, especially as I got to know her offline after our initial meeting. And I was very eager to bring her onto this podcast because what her son, Logan, suffers with is something that I think is very easily overlooked. And as a result of that, it can be very difficult as supporters to not exactly know how to show up because it's not as easily understood. So, a very long-winded intro for a wonderful guest, but Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a treat seeing you. Ellen, I think it's important just to share a little bit more about Logan and kind of a little bit more about his diagnosis. You shared with me that he got diagnosed around 3.5 months, but
You do?
if you can provide a little bit more context about
You do?
kind of who you are and who he is.
This is gonna be a little bit of a bigger story because I think it's speaks to a lot of things. So we had a 2-year-old. I was on maternity leave. We had just started a family business, and Logan was, by all accounts, doing great. And he kind of that startle reflex that infants have kind of went a little past what it should have. That was our initial indication that anything was wrong.
Mm.
So the way the story goes is I was on maternity leave. I was laid off. It was during 2009 during I worked for a home builder.
Oh,
He was
not a good
diagnosed. Not
not a
good,
good
no.
time to be in. Yeah, I remember
No.
that well. Yep.
We saw his first seizure was maybe 15 seconds long. And so he was diagnosed at 3.5 months. And then we kind of lost our insurance, had to find insurance. Like it was this big, huge story around the way it all happened.
Mm.
And so I think what's so interesting when a diagnosis happens is you know a lot of things. Like we had a baby because we had an older child. We'd had no experience with 2 children. We had no experience with all of a sudden not having a job. We had no experience with growing a family business, and we had no experience with a diagnosis. So that was kind of how it started for us. He was diagnosed at 3.5 months with polymicrogyria, which is a brain malformation. About 2 months later, he developed infantile spasms, which was a pretty severe. It's not uncommon in the world of neurology, but it's a challenging diagnosis. We treated him with a growth hormone for about, I don't know, 5, 6 weeks. I kind of can't remember. And then that led to his Lennox-Gastaut diagnosis, and that is just a severe form of epilepsy. And so that's kind of since then we've gotten a cerebral palsy diagnosis. He has a feeding tube. He is nonverbal. He doesn't walk. He's full care.
Mm.
He's 16, but he's probably, I mean, we kind of guess around still in the kindergarten age maybe. But all of that, like the seizures are what are so challenging for us. But honestly, in all of that, one of the things I've learned too is like he is not his diagnosis. We just have to use those things to help get him help. And so that's kind of how ours started.
Ellen, I would love for you to explain a little bit more about that feeling. Do you remember that feeling that
Mm.
you had when you probably saw this first seizure and said, "Okay,
Mm.
something's not right." Can you reflect back on that?
Yeah, it's interesting as I have encountered families along the way, I realize that I do handle things differently sometimes in the initial moment. So I happened to be by myself in the hospital. He was, still smiling and the seizures were really mild. Neurologists can be less than warm. So the delivery of the information was, this is what he has. Write down this number. It's going to be really hard. He's going to have difficult to control seizures. He's going to be mild to severe. It's going to be an uphill battle. We'll be back. And he walked out. And in one sense, I felt like, like my life had been shattered on the floor of the hospital room, and I didn't know which piece to pick up first. But what I will say is I knew we had to do something. I knew my child was still the same child I walked in the hospital with. In that moment, nothing about him had changed other than what I knew. And the team that we had at the hospital, and what I've found along the way is the people that you encounter really sort of help to set your path for you. So everyone that we encountered had a way of encouraging us to tackle what we knew, accept help when it came along, and take it one step at a time. And so
Mm.
I think for me, the other part of the journey for me was now you have to tell everyone. Now you have to go out into the world and you have to explain that your child, who you've just celebrated the birth of, has this devastating condition that you know very little about. You have to answer their questions, you have to carry their emotions, you have to help everyone else through it. And that's not a bad thing. It's great to have friends and family, but it was an interesting dynamic for me to manage all of those emotions, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, beautifully articulated, and do you recall, like, was there a strategy of telling people? How did you and your husband say, "Okay, here's how we're gonna handle this," because you're right, immediately people are gonna ask questions,
Mhm,
not from a place of trying to burden you, but more from a place of curiosity and care.
mhm.
How did you determine with him how you were going to approach the news that, the life that you potentially had envisioned for him wouldn't be, wouldn't come to life, to be blunt?
So, I have like, but this is 2009, right? So there was the world of social media and Facebook and all was still somewhat new, and I still don't know where this came from. I was never a writer,
Mm.
but I started a blog, and that's how I shared the news. I would write the blog, and I would post on Facebook that we had a new entry to the blog. And that was the best way for me to craft the story,
Mm.
to set the tone for what this journey would look like.
Yeah.
And I think for us, that was the best way to experience life at home, good, bad, extreme, and then share that with whoever wanted to listen.
Right.
That became a really, really good way at the time for us to share, I mean, everything that happened.
And I've got to imagine, Ellen, for you, it's an artifact for you to look back on.
Mhm. It is.
I mean, think about where you are today. You said Logan is 16.
He's 16.
And so not only do you get to see the progress that he's made, you get to
Mhm,
experience the progress that you've made.
mhm,
And I'm sure it's so easy for you to look back and, like, recall that the doubt, the concern, the fear, all of which I'm sure manifests in a different way now, but to see the progress that you've made, that's a really important piece of advice for someone is, maybe blogging isn't for everyone or writing,
right,
but to find some way to get it down
right.
because
And I think
you want
too,
that.
yeah, just to it's a for me, that was a different way to experience it. So I knew what I'd experienced, but it was almost like once I wrote it, it helped me clarify my thoughts. It helped me gain perspective. Faith is a huge, you know, it is what drives us in our life. And so that was another way for me to, I don't know, God kind of met me where I
Right,
was and helped me through the process.
right, it
It
helps you
also
grow.
helped for other people. They could read, they could process their own emotions, and then we could, it was a better way to kind of talk with family and friends about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like if someone's reading this, it's like almost immediately they have to force like filter through all of that, and then they have to
Mhm,
decide how to react versus if you're texting or emailing out, and then there's almost this expectation that people immediately respond, and that's when it creates awkwardness where the fury to say the right thing and to say it quickly, right, to check that box versus being able to read it on your own time and then just discern on your own what you wanna do with that. I think that's a really it's really interesting, and I think it's so in line with something you shared with me offline that I've shared this with you now multiple times. You use the word empower a lot.
mm,
Part of what I mentioned in your intro is, not only do you have this nonprofit, you also are involved at the Children's Hospital as a volunteer on the Family Advisory Council, and you use the word empower. What does that mean to you? And how does that actually work with the families that you're interacting with, both in your personal life and through the hospital?
So it's easy, I think, when you get news like that to, well, I think every family, you don't know where to start. You don't know what your next step is. This is not something that anyone is familiar with for the most part. And so I think one of the things that was so helpful for us, there is a time for, "I'm so sorry. This is devastating. What in the world? How are we going to" all of those things, right? But I can't live there. Logan is, like I said, full care. He needs us all the time. We have another child who's 2 years older. He has a very different life. Like, all these every parent has to show up in multiple different ways. And so I think for me, learning the tools that empowered me to show up how I needed to for Logan, how I needed to as a wife, how I needed to for my other child, how I needed to for my parents, all of those things made such a difference because it made us we were moving forward
Mm.
even though things in Logan's life might not have been progressing in the way that we wanted them to. We were still moving forward. We were still living a life with, I don't know, not a it was there was a sense of hope. And so
Right.
I think for other families, one of the things that was a big turning point for us was, I guess, acknowledging is the best word to use, that we were experts in Logan. We knew Logan best. We spent all the time with Logan. We were the ones that could articulate to whoever asked everything about Logan. But I was not an expert in neurology. I was not an expert in gastroenterology, pulmonology, all the specialists that we see. But that was a daunting world as well. That's
Mm.
really overwhelming for lots of people for lots of different reasons. And once we got to the point that we were the experts in Logan, and we were gonna seek out the experts in these other fields to build this, Team Logan that we have. I think every family has their team of doctors and therapists and, school personnel and whoever you're gonna see. That was step 1 for us, is knowing that now we're the head of Team Logan, and this is we're here to take care of our child, and we want the other people to take care of our child in the best way that they can. And then I
So
get Go ahead.
go ahead. No, continue, please.
I was gonna say the second part of that was, and I think this is one of the things that you and I talked about, was those appointments are overwhelming. And all of a sudden we have seizures that we're trying to manage and medications that we're trying to manage. He's still a baby. He's still eating, taking a bottle and nap, and then all the things. And all of a sudden, I was being asked questions like, I would say he's sleeping more than he was. He's not eating as much. He seems to be irritable. Like, things that to me made sense, but to the doctors it didn't necessarily make sense. They needed more detailed information, like he was taking 1 nap a day, now he's taking 2. He had 4 seizures yesterday, now he had 8. They were typically in the morning after he wakes up, now we're seeing him all day. Like, those types of details really empowered us in our appointments to start all of those appointments off in a place that kind of, I don't know, just facilitated the health journey so much better than where we were when I didn't have those tools.
Yeah, and I think it's so natural, right, to be in a emotionally heightened state. When
Mhm,
you're in these
mhm,
appointments, you're looking for answers. You're looking for, how do we make this better? You're never going to reverse the course, but how do we give him the highest quality of life? How do we reduce the stress and the overwhelm that I'm sure you at the moment and still do feel on a regular basis? And when you're operating from a state of heightened emotions, it's very difficult for medical professionals to try to discern what's
mhm,
actually happening.
mhm,
And what I think is so smart, and I think this is just such great advice for every mom out there, not
mhm,
even if
mm,
you have a
mhm,
situation like yours, is when you see something in your child or in a loved one, to be very almost like pragmatic. It's what's happening. When is it happening? How frequently is it happening?
mhm,
Because that having a log
Uh-huh.
of these behaviors, it allows your medical advisors and your team, and I agree, that's the like a beautiful way to really respond in a coherent and the most accurate way.
Uh-huh.
Because I think even I think about my own experience as a mom, nowhere near the experience you have. But when you go to the pediatrician or you're going to a therapist, it's so easy to draw upon the most recent experience with your child, which could be really, really good, or it could be really, really not so good. And so I think it allows everyone to be more honest towards the goal of advancing the health outcome of your child. So again, I just think it's such a simple piece of advice, but it's a really perfect one. And I'm curious, like this sounds silly. Where did you write this down? Was this in your phone? Did you have a spreadsheet? Like what did you like? What were the practices you and your husband? Because I imagine your husband was involved in this too, to make sure that you had everything down correctly.
So, initially, I had a journal, and I wrote down a literally everything. All the things that work. That's the other thing. I feel like discerning what is important, what is valuable, what might be necessary, but may not be like, because if you're not careful, you're literally writing down everything, right? Like,
Right. Right.
he breathed 27 times this minute, and he breathed 28. I mean, like,
Right.
you can get overwhelmed with it, but I had a journal, and I write down times, and I would write down the date, day of the week, and it was 3:23, he had a seizure. It was this type, it lasted this long, he seemed okay afterwards. At, 4:27, he took a bottle and he ate this much. He took a nap from this time to this time. We gave this medication at this time. This is how much we're on right now. Like, I didn't that was the best way I knew to and it in the beginning, I walked into the doctor's and I said, "Here, like, this is everything. I don't know how to make sense of it. I just know that this is everything that has happened. Do you see anything?" And to a great extent, I still do that. I
Right.
capture all the information I can when I don't know what I'm looking for, and I go in and I say, "I'm gonna give you everything. I can expand on anything, but here it all is. Tell me where you see something that we need to talk about." Over the years, we have developed I have this sheet that I created. We have a full-time nurse, and she fills it all out, so we know exactly when he got his meds, when he took his nap, when he had a
Yeah.
seizure, what type of seizure it was. We have a digital seizure tracker as well, but
Oh.
that's what we use.
Yeah, it's like having a baby. It's like, when was the last change? How many ounces did they take, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. We had to share how many diapers when we go in the hospital when he was little. They had to weigh all of his diapers. Like, it was such a new experience, but to your point about any kids, our oldest is a freshman in college, and he was not feeling well the other day, and I went through the checklist. Okay,
Mm.
what hurts? Do you have a fever? Are you like, all of the things before we decided the next step. So
Yeah,
it works.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
I think
works,
it
and I just have to imagine that for the doctors and nurses and everyone that wants to support you, it makes them easier to for them to do their job and allows them to make decisions faster
Mhm.
because they're not trying to sift through kind of like, "Okay, well, when is this happening?" And again, you're human, as you described, Logan's condition, things are changing and it is so
Mm.
easy to be overwhelmed and exhausted by the most recent thing. And so again, I know I've said this a million times to you. I just think it's such great advice and something that we can all take from this episode as it relates to anything, whether it's a kid, your spouse, your sibling. Write it down. Write it
I
down.
also think it helped us walk away from appointments feeling like we had accomplished something and feeling like we were heard. And that's probably what I hear from a lot of families is there's this they feel like that their doctors aren't hearing them. And certainly you're going to have experiences where that is the case, but I do think often it helps the communication and families walk away feeling a little more like, okay, that appointment was worth it. Now I feel like we're doing something.
And but to your point, again, I'll play off the word team that you used earlier.
Well,
It's a win. Like, being in this world that you're in, feeling heard and feeling like you had a successful appointment, even if you heard things you didn't want to hear,
right.
is something that you can build off of.
Mhm. You feel empowered.
You feel empowered, and that
You
goes
do.
back to the first point. Yeah,
You do.
I think that's so beautiful. One of the other things I really wanna talk to you about, Ellen, is epilepsy.
Mm.
Epilepsy itself, I have experience with epilepsy in my family, and you have made this statement that oftentimes epilepsy is viewed as a side effect, kind of not
Uh-huh.
as like the main entree,
Uh-huh.
and that can be very difficult. So talk to me a little bit more about what that is like when typically you hear epilepsy and you're right. It feels like it's a thing that happens as a result of something else. So what has that been like for you and your family, and
Mhm.
how has that affected how people help you in a way?
So for us, I also there are I think the statistics I'm terrible with remembering all the statistics exactly as they are, when they are, but maybe 2/3 of people with epilepsy find a medication or a treatment that works, and they have controlled epilepsy,
Mhm.
which is amazing, and it's amazing because we've reached that point. Logan falls in the 1/3 that we've tried. I don't know that we have many more medications left to try. He has a VNS, which is, an implanted device to help, and we still have daily seizures.
Mm.
And so for us, that if we could control the seizures, everything else about his life would be different.
Yeah.
Well, I take that back. If we could control the seizures without so much medication that he is sedated, but it would drastically improve his quality of life. And oftentimes, our family and friends see Logan when he's out, when we're in the car, we go for a walk, and he's doing great. They don't see the seizures. It's not something
Mm.
that and when they do, they're like, "Holy cow, this you deal with this every day? Does he have these a lot?" And people have known us for years and still
Yeah.
haven't experienced that. So I
Mm.
think that it often looks like he just needs, you know, he's got a feeding tube and he needs a wheelchair, but everything else is kind of okay. And I mean, we've been controlled, I think, in his 16 years, the longest period was maybe 7 months. And so
Mm.
other than that, we may go 24 hours, we may go a few days, but they still wreak havoc. And I think that for
Mm.
the population that are like Logan, I think it's just important to know and that everyone that is not controlled is not like Logan. Like,
Right.
they're fully functioning adults but it's also scary to say that because they don't want people to know. So it's a really tricky condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though people can see that he is not an able body and verbal, it doesn't always appear as this like uh, as frantic as I'm sure it feels on
Mhm.
the caregiver side, where you feel like you're constantly waiting for the next seizure to happen. And I'm
Right.
sure it only takes your friends and family members one seizure to realize what it must feel like to live on that brink of fear. And so I'm curious, how Ellen, the mom, how do you
Mhm.
navigate your days knowing that you are just anticipating the next time that seizure happens?
So, this is gonna sound terrible, but my husband has said, "I think you are desensitized to it." So, he's been having seizures since he was 3 months old, and I am with him the most as far as our nurse and I. So, I have seen so many, unless it's really bad, I go into, "Okay, what do we do? Do we need a rescue med? Do we need oxygen? Do we need let's, make sure he's safe." Like, I go into that type of mode. It hurts my husband a lot more
Mm.
because it's awful that his little body
Yes.
has to go through that. But I think I'm sad to say that I am. I've seen so many. He's had so many that unless it's really bad and he recovers well. He has some that we think are terrible, and next thing you know, he's smiling and, reaching to give us a hug. So,
And
it's just a I think that too, it is so hard to describe to people. It is such a hard condition to put in a little box and wrap up with a purple bow.
so, excuse my ignorance on this. Is he in pain when they happen?
We don't know. So that is probably one of the harder things in families that we've talked to that deal with other conditions. He can't tell us anything.
Mm.
He really can't tell us. And so people
Mhm.
that I have talked to that know people who have, really tough seizures, a lot of times they feel afterwards like they have the flu. Their body
Mm.
aches, that type of thing. I don't know. And
Wow.
we have learned over the years he has a pretty high pain tolerance. So, that's one of the hardest things, especially if he is uncomfortable and irritable, and we try you start do all the, you know, process and elimination, and he still seems uncomfortable. Sometimes that's a seizure coming on.
Yeah.
Sometimes the weather, the barometric pressure changes can cause issues. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't that's one of the harder parts of it.
And, it's an interesting role that you play. I think most people expect the man to be more in control and the woman to have
Mhm.
more emotional response to it. And I think one of the things that I admire so much about what you're sharing is you're the steady hand.
Mm.
And when these things happen, you need someone sturdy and that feels in control of a situation that is truly uncontrollable. I mean,
Sure.
that's part of how we come to peace with things, right? Is when we have the
Mhm.
sturdiness to move past what's difficult. And so I just think it's a really powerful admission to say that this is how you feel because
Mm.
I
Mhm.
think there are probably caregivers of children in this situation where you feel guilty for not feeling something.
Right.
And what you're saying is it's okay if you don't feel something
Right.
because
And
this
I
is your
do.
life. This is normal
Sure.
for you.
And I have my times, right? And I think it is important to feel it. Absolutely. I think it's important to acknowledge that. And there are times that part of it is this is just hard.
So
This
hard.
is just hard. And it's hard. It's going to be hard today. It's going to be hard tomorrow. It's like, and hopefully it's going to be hard for the rest of our lives because we're taking care of him and he,
'Cause he's here.
he
Yeah.
would have relies on us. So I do think it's super important to acknowledge all of those things. But yeah, sometimes I do feel I feel a little cold, and I don't I giving myself some grace, I don't think I am for sure, but that is how I deal. And I will say my mom was the same way. Like, she may fall apart later, but in the moment, like, she
She's
was the one that yep,
she's cool, calm, and
yep,
collected. Okay, so I'm gonna ask
absolutely.
a question on this podcast that I've never asked before,
Oh,
but it
goodness.
feels so appropriate to ask it. When was the last time you cried?
About Logan?
Yeah.
So, I might even cry saying this. There are times that I apologize to him for maybe not showing up like I thought I should, and there were times that I, um, I tell him how proud I am of him and how smart he is, and those are the times that I tell him that I'm so grateful to be his mom, and I wish I could change it for him. I wish I could make it better, and those are probably that's where I the medical stuff, like, I can handle. When I was after he was born, I really struggled. We went on a trip with our older son, and every pregnant person I saw, I kept thinking if I could do it again, I'd get it right this time because I felt like I did something. So I think those are the types of times when I am more it's the things that are out of my control, right? It's the things that I can't do
Yeah.
that I struggle with. And that's where I go back to like that's I would be those broken pieces on the floor if it wasn't for our faith because
Yeah.
that's the only thing that can keep me
Yeah.
together. And having a very supportive husband, like, I it breaks my heart for families that this is easily something that tears families apart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the
Um
divorce rate amongst families with a family member with a disability is
Yeah.
astronomically higher, and it's easy to understand, and I agree, it's also
Mhm.
heartbreaking.
Mhm.
I also am so inspired by couples like you and your husband that have found a way for it to actually strengthen everything. You've built on a foundation where you're just rock solid. And I think that that's the commitment that you all made, and it's so much easier said than done in practice when you're having to
Mhm.
make these tough decisions. But it's such a beautiful representation of what a marriage can look like. And
Right.
you guys can do anything. Um, well, thank you for almost making me cry because it's funny, people ask me, like, "How do I do this and not cry every time?" And
Right?
sometimes I feel cold if I'm being blunt,
Oof.
and it's not. It's just, the stories like this are so amazing to me, and again, for me, it's easy to say, "This is a story, that this is your life." This is your life, and it really is so beautiful to hear how you've gotten from 3.5 months to today, while
Mm.
also
Mhm.
having an
Mhm.
older child, nonetheless,
Mhm.
that's out there in the world trying to make a life for themselves as well.
Yeah.
As we begin to wrap, I also wanna give you the chance to talk a little bit more about the Logan Jet Research Foundation and the
Mhm.
efforts that you've put forth there, and I'd also love for you to share just ways that people can support you, your family, or people like your family
Mhm.
that are going through these things.
So what's interesting about the foundation is we were at a doctor's appointment, and our doctor was super frustrated because all of the treat the new treatments tended to treat the same group of people, and our son was never part of the group that new treatments treated. He's like, "Why we have to start back here and find the problem." So we initially started as solely as a research foundation. And while we definitely support research, there are so many things about our life that are not just it's because of the epilepsy, but
Right.
like one of the we have partnered with a group. They're amazing. They're called Hope Through Mobility, and Logan's mobility is a key to his life. So if he was not able to have a wheelchair or a stander or things that a stroller to go for a walk, he would be in his bed all the time. He's 100 pounds. He's over
Right.
5 feet tall. He's a big kid. So this group and then there's a long story behind it, and people ask all the time, "Why don't you just give these to people in the US with their liability issues?" But let's say he grows out of a wheelchair. In the US, for liability reasons, DMA companies cannot really customize a wheelchair for someone. There are kids in other countries who don't have chairs at all. And so
Mm.
this group gets donated wheelchairs, and they custom fit them to all these kids in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and I don't even remember where all they're going. And they're such a great group. And that is logistically super challenging. So we work with them. Our biggest thing and one of the challenges that we've actually had is finding those people that fall through the cracks. There are a lot of programs available and a lot of people get plugged into programs that are perfect and are what they need and they go on their way. But there are so many people that fall through the cracks for whatever reason. And I think that's one of the things we talk to you guys about is and the hospital is, there are families that English is not their first language. There are
Mhm.
single moms. There are for some reason, nobody connected this family to resources or, estate planning
Mhm.
for special needs families. Like, there's just so many of these pieces. So that's always kind of been where our heart is to help those families
Yeah.
just really to connect to the resources that are already there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I mean, I could give you the very specifics of our foundation, but at the heart of it, it is helping families like ours to find their way.
Ellen, last question. If you had to give one piece of advice for a family that's earlier in their journey, maybe the 3.5 mark, 6 months, what would you tell them?
Take a deep breath and accept the help. That's what I would say.
I love it. You know I love that. Ellen Wingate, thank you so much for joining us today. I have learned so much. I genuinely mean this when I say you are just phenomenal and such an inspiration. Thank you for being the mom you are to Logan and being willing to share so much vulnerability and honesty on this podcast. I am certain you will reach at least one mom that needs to hear that today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.